and had been given 2 weeks by the council to move the boat. And it was a bit sad actually. I met the woman at her house and she took me in her car with her boyfriend down to where the boat was. And she sat in the car with her hands over her eyes like this and she said, I can't look at that boat, it breaks my heart. She told me the story, and what had happened was that her dad had died and she'd inherited some money. She was hoping it'd be enough that she and her boyfriend could buy a little cottage in the country. It turned out to be not enough for that because of taxes and all the rest of it. And they'd been walking by a canal one day in Nottingham, and they spotted this vessel moored on the canal, and out on the deck was a man in a deck chair, you know, sipping wine, and it was a nice evening and stuff, and they were admiring the boat, and he said, oh, well, come aboard, and he took them down underneath, and it was all filled with oil paintings and a wood-burning stove, and it was all beautiful. And they were admiring this, and he said, well, she's for sale, actually. And they bought her on the spot using, you know, the sum of this lady's inheritance money. And they arranged to have the boat craned out of the canal in Nottingham and brought down to the Thames in Reading. They're going to keep her in a marina and pot her off down the river for weekends. Well, so they shipped it down to the Thames, and as soon as they put the boat back in the river, the little pump alarm started squealing, and the bloke with the crane said, oh, she's pouring in water, I'm going to have to pull her out again. It was at that point that they noticed there was a big diagonal crack down the side of the hull, just about where our doorway is now. Sorry. And the boat was never going back in the water without an extensive rebuild. Whether this was damage sustained during the move, or whether the boat was just rotten, we don't really know. The owners were clearly not boat people, and they set about trying to sue the guy that had sold them the boat. If you know anything about boats, it's pretty much, you know, you take your chances, but of course that didn't come off. And so they decided to sell the boat. And the boyfriend, while he was showing me around the boat, said, well, I hope we don't have to burn her. And I didn't know about this, that his girlfriend hadn't told me about this, but if they were unable to move the boat within 2 weeks, their plan was to burn the boat and sell all of the brass fittings on eBay, because they figured that was actually worth more than the boat itself. So I bought the boat from them via the eBay method and had it towed on a low loader out to Suffolk. I'm very worried about getting it there because of low lines and humpback bridge going in and so on. And we installed it in our garden. If you look at the reverse of this, it's about 100 feet from the high water mark at that point. So this huge crane with outriggers came and lowered the boat into the garden on railway sleepers. And I was running around trying to make it level because the guy was not coming back. So we got the boat down, and I found these local boat builders. In Lowestoft near us there is a traditional boat builder than this. It was very rotten, and we knocked that down altogether. And we sourced a lot of local timber. It's very hard to get good mahogany and teak and traditional boat building wood these days. What you can get that's new comes from Burma, where it's all, forests have been denuded by the colonels, and it's all horrible. But we were able to source some second-hand stuff from places like a boys' boarding school that had closed down, where they had mahogany locker doors, and I bought a set of them, and we used those for panels in the wheelhouse. And just move on a little bit here. Okay, this is the interior of the boat. The panels that you see around there are these boys' locker doors. The beams that you see going across were actually the banisters from an old hotel in Lowestoft that had been knocked down. And the most amazing source that I found was that near us there is a Cold War RAF bunker, which is now closed up, which was used during the 50s and actually housed up to 250 people and has a system of tunnels with big lead doors and stuff. It was basically a nuclear missile control center. And all of the floorboards down there were panels about this size of what we took to be teak. And I was shown down there by a fan actually, who knew the contractor who had been hired to get all this teak out of the system of tunnels. So he came up with all of these panels, and there was a pile of them that were just out, getting wet every day, and he managed to get the bosses to give them to me. And it turned out that the wood they were made of, which looked very grey, was not actually teak, it was actually called jarrah. And jarrah is a teak-like wood, a little bit more brittle, not usually used in boat building for that reason. A lot of it came from northern Australia, and when they would send convict boats down there, they would come back filled with jarrah, and they used to line the floors of mines with them in the north of England, and also in market towns before there were paved roads. they used to, for market, they used to put down like a sort of a floor of this jarrah stuff. So we found that this jarrah polished up very nicely, and so with the boat builders I was able to put the this really lovely interior in. You can see my view there, which is out towards the sea. If you look backwards, you see marshes. There's also, and we figured out the best thing to do was actually to go with a maritime turbine. Again, I'm not in an area where I'm a great expert here, so some of you probably know more about this than I do, but we used a marine wind turbine up the mast, 450 watts, and a series of 175 watt solar panels on the roof of the pilot house. I took out the diesel engine, which was under the floor of the wheelhouse, sold that on eBay, and replaced it with a bank of batteries. So the way the system works is that during the day, provided there is some wind and some sun, the battery banks are loaded up, and that means that I can work at night, often through till the early hours of the morning, using only renewable energy power from the batteries. Most of my equipment, most of my stuff, as you saw last night, will run on a laptop these days, which doesn't require a whole lot of power. I've found it's made me very aware of sort of boiling kettles and things like that, and I'm often chided by my family. I did in a van on my laptop yesterday to what I could do in a recording studio. There's a difference that if I need to record a choir or a Balkan string section or something like that, you really need a decent recording studio to do it. But for most of what I do with keyboards and samples and synthesizers and so on, I can do it right here in the lifeboat. And if I have just one or two guests, I can get them up to the lifeboat as well. I've had some amazing guests on the album, some of whom have made the trip. But I've got people on the album like Imogen Heap, who is a very fine electronic musician. Mark Knopfler, ex-Dire Straits, plays guitar. I had to go to his studio to do that in London. He wouldn't make the trip up to Suffolk. Let's see, Regina Spektor is on the album. Natalie McMaster is a very fine Cape Breton fiddle player, is also on the album. And the album is close to finished. I hope to finish it next week, and it's going to come out in October. But something I thought I would tell you about today, which I'm particularly proud of and is very current at the moment, is actually a game that I've been creating. And the album is called A Map of the Floating City. And it's my first album in 20 years. I was actually in Silicon Valley for most of that time doing a tech company thing. And when I came back to the music business after all that time, it was sort of interesting. I felt like I'd been asleep for 10 years, like Austin Powers or someone like that, you know. I sort of wake up out of cryogenic freezing and suddenly there's these shiny new toys, which is fabulous. But I noticed that people are not really buying records anymore. However, they do seem to be spending a lot of time on social networks like Facebook and Twitter and so on, and also playing games. And I'm sure you guys are probably not gamers, some of you are, but I'm sure you've got kids or nephews and nieces and stuff that are into gaming. And if you're like me, I'm sort of mind-boggled by the hours that they spend in there, and also the how brain dead a lot of it seems to be. And it seems to me that the most interesting aspect of computer gaming was actually the networking and the fact that it was a new kind of social interaction. But I wondered how valuable social interaction would be if it was built around sort of machine gunning, aliens and mutants and things like that. And so I thought, well, there's no reason actually why a game couldn't be really interesting. And I needed a new way to engage a new generation of fans. So this is the point where my fictional brain kicks in, okay? Because I'm taking a bit of artistic license here, but the background to the game is all about the rivalry between Edison and Tesla. And so the basis for the game is that... this is Google Earth, which you're probably familiar with. There's about 4,000 players in there now. There have been over 100,000 postings within the forum of people trying to solve the mystery of the game. And a lot of people will come on and say, come on, clue us in, how's it going to end? I don't know how it's going to end. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I read the forums, I lurk through them, and if I see really good ideas in there, it becomes the truth. The moment it's reported in the Floating City Gazette, it now is the truth. So in terms of how the game is going to end, each one of the 9 tribes is going to submit its own version of what's going on, and I'm going to pick one, and that will be the truth. And the prize for the winning tribe of the 9 is that I'm going to perform a private concert for them, at which I'm going to play the album in its entirety with my band. So if there's only this number of players left at that point in a tribe, it'll be a tent like this, somewhere like on a hillside like this, that I'll play for them. If on the other hand it's a tribe that has 690 players, then I'm going to have to find a somewhat bigger venue. So that is my game, Map of the Floating City, and it's a little bit unusual. I don't see many musical artists doing stuff like this. There's no business model for it. You know, it's a free game. It doesn't require any software download. It just works in your browser when you're on the internet. If you guys are probably sort of thinking, well, it doesn't look like my kind of thing, but I'm sure you've got a nephew or a niece or a son or grandson or whatever that would be into playing it. It would be lovely for me to get some new fans that would become familiar with my music through immersion in it like this. And you know, I talked briefly to record labels about this album, including Universal, which is one of the few remaining big labels, and they looked at my game and they said, wow, I wish Universal had the resources to build stuff like this for our own musicians, for our own artists. And I was very pleased with that, because all of the people on my team I've never met. They're all around the world, they're volunteers, most of them moonlighting from their own jobs. They did it because they love it, because they've had a lot of fun doing it. I've paid them a small fee, but the budget has been very, very low for this. And we meet every day on Skype in a chat room, and we've developed the game like that. It's been running for about 5 weeks now. We're about halfway through. So sometime this autumn, we'll see the conclusion of the game and the resulting concert that comes from it.